do a little introduction of who we are and what we do. My name's Gareth, and above me or below me on the screen, depending on how you've got it set up, is Mandy, and we work for I'll Listen. I'll Listen is a project that's being run by MCH Psychological Services, which is a charity based on the Isle of Man. And what we try to do is provide early intervention and prevention techniques to help people's well-being through a difficult time like the one we're experiencing at the moment. It's not just me and Mandy. There's a huge team that we have on board with our charity. And many of the things that we discussed today will be real life tools that our therapists use at the centre. Our charity is headed up by a professor of psychology. We have cognitive behavioral therapists, art therapists, play therapists, you name it, we've got it. So we've got a huge wealth of resources to lean on. What we, as a charity on the Isle of Man, we want to try and help as many people as possible. So some of the tools that we'll go through today are there for you to take control of yourself. And we have to do the thing about the charity. If anybody does like to raise any money in the future for such things, then we'll be very grateful for any donations that might come our way.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gareth. So just to reiterate for those who've just joined the call, what we're going to do today is we're going to ask you to keep yourselves on mute, and we will be communicating with you throughout today's session and asking you to use the chat function. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, it looks like a little speech bubble on your toolbar. If you click on that, it will open up a box for you, and you're able to contact Gareth, myself on the panelist option, or you can click on panelists and attendees and communicate with everybody. So if you've got any questions or any thoughts and views as we go through today's session, if you pop them into the chat box, then Gareth and I will keep an eye on that. We'll also give you an opportunity for any questions at the end of today's session. And if you have any questions or things that you might want to get a little bit more information on, then we'll offer you an email address at the end of today's session so that you can contact Gareth and I directly, so without the need to break confidentiality and so on. So we'll give you that option at the end of today's session. So while our session today is going to last around about 30 minutes, and as I say, you'll have the opportunity to ask some questions at the end of today's session. The topic that we've chosen is called the circle of control. And what we've done, as Gareth mentioned to you before, is really think about the sorts of challenges that people are facing right now with what we're going through, what we're experiencing here on the Isle of Man with the current restrictions underway, and think of some things that we can discuss with you that might support your well-being during this really tricky time. So this is what our journey will look like for the next 30 minutes. We're going to start off by thinking about some of the challenges and obstacles that we're currently facing. So the sorts of things, the daily challenges that this current pandemic is presenting to all of us. And, you know, the analogy that we often use is that we are all traveling in the same storm, but we might be traveling in it in very different boats. Some of us might be in luxury yachts and others might be traveling in very leaky rowing boats. So we do understand that the challenges and obstacles you might be facing might be very different from your neighbour, your colleagues, your friends, and so on. So we'll think about what those challenges and obstacles are for you and how you've risen to those challenges as well. We're going to think about stress and current stresses that you might be facing. And then we're going to talk about the circle of control. So this is a model that we do hope will be really helpful for you in really kind of putting some perspective on what we're going through at the moment and how that might be useful to you in reframing the sorts of challenges and obstacles that you're facing right now. We're going to finish the session by thinking about some healthy habits that you can either build on, things that you might be currently doing, things that you might want to share with other people on the call, as well as some new things that you might try as well. And as I said, a little bit of time at the end of today's session for any questions that you haven't asked as we've gone through.
Perfect. We've just had a quick request, Mandy, if you could turn your volume up a little bit. I think it might be a little bit quiet.
Okay, I will see. I'm not sure how I'm able to do that. I'll be really honest with you. I'll try and speak up.
Well, Mandy has a little look at that. We're going to go into our first question. So this is our first opportunity to be able to use our chat function. The question that we're going to ask you is, because we've already experienced a tricky time during lockdown, and now we're in our second one, I want you to think back a little bit and really think about what challenges you set yourself over that period, and or if you overcame any personal obstacles that were in the way. Maybe it was working and from home. Maybe it was a space that you're sharing with family, friends. Maybe it was taking up a new challenge to get fit or anything like that, really. And if you could just jot down a few ideas into your chat function, we'll try and share that with the group. Mandy, I'll ask you the same question. What challenge did you set yourself?
So there's been all sorts of different challenges that we have had to overcome during lockdown. Some of them are professional. So Gareth and I do a lot of our training normally face to face. So we've had to very quickly move to delivering all of our training currently via webinar. So that's definitely been a challenge, getting to grips with the technology, making sure your volume's right, and all these different things to make sure that people can see and hear us and interact with us.
Yeah, we've got a few coming through now. So try and declutter the house. That's absolutely a really good positive way of addressing things. That the difficulties of working from home and keeping that work-life balance, doing home workouts, learning French. Crikey, quite a lot of good challenging things there coming through. And set myself a routine sooner rather than later. Gosh, it's really important, routines, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Having that routine that works for you, and it will be different for every single one of us. But having a routine that you know works for you, trying different things out, knowing when you're most productive, for example, what time of day works best for you with the other people in your space that you sharing a house with, and perhaps if you're working from home, managing to juggle that alongside homeschooling and all the other challenges that we're facing. Having a routine really helps you to kind of get through that, I think. We've seen exercise a few times along here as well, which is brilliant. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through today's session as well.
Absolutely. So what we're trying to do here is explore options of balancing our resilience factor. We've called it here the stress bucket. And each and every one of us has an ability to cope with different things that will affect our everyday lives. That's our resilience factor, our stress bucket. And with all the demands and stresses that come in a difficult period, maybe it is the upheaval of being in lockdown one day, having the concerns about where we're getting our food, the safety aspect of for ourselves and our family members, having to wear masks, social distancing, even the weather outside that's making it difficult to go out and do exercise. These are all demands and stresses that we face, among lots of other things like our workload as well, and trying to teach the kids. If we don't address that, if we don't try to do something to open up a tap at the other end of this bucket, there's only one way that this is going to go. And that's just like that stress bucket says there, it's going to get fuller and fuller to a point where we're unable to cope with things that are coming our way, and we break the sides. And that's when our well-being becomes really affected. What we're trying to encourage by looking at the different things that we've been doing, such as learning a new language, going out, doing some exercise, or even decluttering the house, is to give ourselves a little bit of breathing space so that we can take control of things again, open up a little tap on the other side of that bucket, and be able to balance our well-being a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, and there's not one size fits all with all of this. We're all dealing with different stresses, and what might stress one person might not affect somebody else at all. So we are all very individual in that. And I would say it's the same when it comes to de-stressing as well. It's finding what works for you. And we've seen some great examples already that you've shared with us. The other thing that I would say is it's about tuning into those things and understanding what works for you, because by overcoming obstacles, by setting challenges, we learn an awful lot from that. We can understand, firstly, that we can get through really tricky times. We are able to do that. We do have a certain amount of resilience, if you like. And the second thing is, what worked for me that time might work for me in the future. So the next time that I come across a challenge and an obstacle, then I am able to get through that. So we can learn an awful lot from it. We called this session the Circle of Control, and we wanted to bring this model to you because I think it's so useful in trying to make sense of things, particularly if we're feeling really overwhelmed. And, what we're going through at the moment, what we have been going through for quite some time now, since really March last year, has been a real period of uncertainty, of upheaval. We've seen so much change, we've seen so many things, rules, restrictions, and so on come into play that we've never had to deal with before. So there may be times where we might feel a little bit overwhelmed. We might be feeling like that today, or we might find that we are feeling that way tomorrow. Perhaps we have in the past. This is a model that helps us to kind of make sense of all of that, to sort through it all, to sort through everything we're dealing with, and to really focus our time, our energy, and our effort on the things that are in the center of that model over which we have direct control. So this model was introduced in the 90s by Stephen Covey, and it very much draws on the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's something that really does, I think, help people to understand what it is that we're currently going through. So starting, we've got three circles there, starting with the outer circle, where these are things that might concern us, but over which we have no control. So in some way, they affect our lives. They touch our lives in some sense, but they're not things over which we have any direct control. Then we have the influence circle. So these are things over which we don't have direct control, but we might have some degree of influence. And then right in the center of the circle, we have things over which we have direct power and control to do something about. So let's walk you through this model in a bit more detail now.
Absolutely. So we'll start with the outer circle first. This is the aspect where we're saying you should spend least amount of your time worrying about. As you can see, the things that we've put in the middle of that circle are our ideas, and each situation you're going to be faced with, you would be able to put things in there that's reflective to what you're going through. But as an example of the things that we have no control of, are things like the weather. So the weather is going to happen no matter what happens, and we have no control over that. So if we spent our time worrying about that and in the future what we can do, it's pointless effort, really. We have no control of it. COVID-19, we personally don't have any control over it. Now, there are experts out there, and if there's any on the call, then absolutely you would put that into your control. However, the majority of us, we can't spend our time worrying about that, which is really tricky in a situation that we're faced with at the moment, because it's in the news, it's everywhere. In fact, it's all that anybody's talking about, really. Everybody, I'm sure, on the call will be dialing in this afternoon to find out what the government have said on the next release. So it is absolutely affecting us, but in reality, we can't control what's going on with that. We just have to sort of forget about it a little bit when we're concerned with our well-being. And even the actions of other people. If we start to worry about what other people are doing, then it's again something that we have no control of, and it's just going to add to those multiple effects that's going to have a damaging impact on our well-being. Equally, past decisions. Again, if this is another cognitive behavioral approach, that if we worry too much about our past decisions, it's going to trigger that anxiety effect. We're going to have, it's going to affect our sleep patterns, and so on and so on. In reality, we can't change things that have happened in our past. So by focusing all our attention on it, it's just a pointless task, really. So we can forget about that as well. But there are things that we can have influence over, not complete control.
So moving on to the influence circle, some of the examples that we've put in here might resonate with you. There might be other things that you personally would put in there as well. We said, of course, we can't directly control the actions of other people, but we might be able to influence them in some way. So, for example, the people that we share our space at home with, or perhaps our colleagues. Perhaps we might model certain behaviors. Maybe we might have conversations with people, provide some feedback to people. Those sorts of things might influence other people. They won't directly control them, but they might get a positive outcome. And things like where you work. So if you're working from home, the space that you work in your house, you might be limited, but you do have some choice over influencing that. So you might be able to negotiate with the rest of your family, with your flatmates, whoever you're sharing a home with, a little bit of space that you can carve off where you can get a little bit of peace and quiet. So what you share on social media, again, the things that we see on social media, we can influence. We can dictate what sort of things come up on our Facebook feed, for example. We can decide which of those things we can share as well. So whatever it is that we share, is that useful? Is it helpful? Or is it going to be harmful for people? Are we guilty of sharing rumors and perhaps conspiracy theories? Or are we sharing really helpful information? So all of these things, we have an influence on the people around us. And so it is worthwhile spending some time, some energy, some effort on those things, but certainly more so than we would have done on the previous circle, because those are things we want to limit the amount of energy and effort we put into those and the time we spend on it.
Absolutely. So this brings us to the parts that we do have control of and we should be spending our time and effort on. And as you can see, we've got a list on the screen again. The main ones for us, I think, is how you spend your spare time should be number one. So if we're finding it difficult working and living under the one area, making the most of that time that we have outside of the work environment is really important. Making sure that we can get out and do a bit of exercise, or maybe it's connecting with people, family members, friends, over a platform like this or FaceTime or however you choose to do it. Having that connection, that interpersonal connection is so important through a tricky time when people are very isolated and could very easily feel very lonely. So absolutely, it's worth spending time thinking about how we are going to spend that time. Also, the things that we eat, we are still in charge of that. That's something that we should be making sure. It's very easy to grab a pot noodle or make some or skipping a meal, that type of thing when we're at work and living in the same environment. So it's really important to pay attention to what we're doing and even plan ahead. It's nice and easy to share recipes with friends, family members, co-workers, because that's going to encourage other people to eat healthily as well. And then your reactions to events as well. So it's very easy to get into the mindset of being quite negative because that's the language that's being used in the news at the moment. I have to lock down. I have to quarantine. I've been told to do this. And it gives that reaction of being very negative and almost prison-like. So if you can flip that around and go at a positive, saying, I'm choosing to spend my time at home to keep my family safe and do that positive reaction, you'll have a much better outcome. So it's absolutely worth spending time in this control, thinking about what you have your future control over.
I think, this is a useful exercise to do for yourself. And we've given you a few examples on the last few slides of things that you might put in your circle of concern, the circle of influence, the circle of control. And it will differ in truth for every single one of us. But at times where we're feeling really overwhelmed, perhaps put some focus on what you would put in your circle of control. Because sometimes it can feel as if we have control over nothing at all, as if the whole world is happening to us and we are playing such a small part in it. But if we actually really think about it hard and even start to perhaps list down the things that we have direct control over, then we'll find that there's actually quite a lot that we have choice over, we can make decisions about, and we can perhaps have a positive outcome from. So a useful thing to try, if you haven't tried it before, definitely worth giving a go. So we wanted to bring in 3 things that we might put in that center circle, some of which Gareth kind of touched on already here. 3 things that lots of studies have shown have a positive impact on our well-being. So we know we're going to have a really good outcome if we put some focus on these things. And the great news is we have direct power and control over doing something about these things. So as you might guess from the icons on the screen here, this is about the things that we eat. It's about connecting with other people, and it's about some exercise. So let's explore those in a bit more detail now.
Absolutely. I think it's really important to think of this as that stress bucket that's getting full. What we're trying to introduce here is some ways of balancing that out so we don't get overwhelmed. And the great news is, by addressing these three things, even if we're not feeling overwhelmed at the moment, what we're doing is building up a resilience so that we can handle things in the future better. So we'll start off with eating then. So diet. What we'd like you to do again is use the chat function and just tell us what sort of things that you've been doing over maybe the first lockdown or continue to do now about how you're addressing your diet. And we're not here to shame anybody. We're just here to sort of share some ideas and hopefully inspire some other people that are on the call as well. Straight away, we've got Hello Fresh. That was a godsend. It did something really good and absolutely really good one. What about you, Mandy? What have you been doing?
So I think, yeah, a lot of people reconnected with baking and cooking, having more time in the house if you're working from home. For some people, it's a real challenge. But, the takeaways, somebody said there, local takeaways as well, they have really ramped up what's been available to you. So, lots of places that didn't do takeaways before are now doing it. So there's a huge variety, isn't there? And if that makes your life a bit easier, why not?
Oh, we've got some great stuff on here. Meal planning. I mean, that's really good because if you write things down, you're more likely to engage and do it in for the future. We've got trying to buy more local veg and cooking from scratch, not ready meals. Now that's really inspiring, isn't it? I wish I could say I've been doing that every day, but I'd be lying.
Trying to go to the shops less, so meal planning for a week, which is really good. Planning is a really hopeful act. It's something that's future based. Actually, the act of planning something and the reward from actually cooking something from scratch and getting to eat that at the end of it is so good for our well-being. Gives us a real boost.
Yeah, I struggle to eat healthier. I absolutely agree with that. It is tricky, isn't it? Because it's when we're working from home and we're living under the same house, then the lines are blurred really. When we had that routine of going to work, having your lunch, finishing work and being able to cook something, that sort of disappeared. It is quite important to keep that routine. I get up in the morning, put a shirt on, and I make sure that I do spend a little bit of time for myself as well. So when I finish the work day, I make sure I put my relaxing clothes on as well. For me, that's really important because I'm gaining a little bit of my boundaries back again.
Yeah. So whatever you're doing, and again, whatever works for you with all the challenges and obstacles that we're all having to deal with at the moment is down to you. And sometimes, if takeaways make your life easier, if deliveries to your house make your life easier, brilliant, do it. Whatever works for you, I would say.
Absolutely.
So the next thing that we've got is exercise. So we're going to ask you again, using your chat function, what have you been up to? Have you been able to get out in the fresh air? It's been very fresh, I have to say, over the past few days. Or have you been engaging with some exercise in your house? Perhaps these are routines and habits that you had already established. Maybe it's something new that you've tried. So let's hear what you've been up to and see if we can draw a bit of inspiration from one another.
Going for a walk every day and stretching we've got on already. That's really good. I've with the weather that we've had around at the moment, I found it really tricky to get the motivation to go outside. So luckily I've got two young children and one of them has got me involved with dancing on TikTok and Just Dance and all these different things. So it might be that you have to think a little bit about how you can do different things. We've got daily dog walks. Wow.
We had some running as well. So somebody gets one child, the elder child, to babysit the younger one so they can go out for a run. Brilliant. And you're carving off a bit of the day for yourself in that as well, which is fabulous. Lots of people doing walking, running, cycling. All these things are fabulous, not only for your physical health, but for your mental well-being as well. And if you can get out in the fresh air, we know again that gives you a boost of those fabulous chemicals that are going to give your well-being a real boost.
Absolutely. Throwing stones into the sea with this. I love that. I've been doing that myself as well. And what you're doing there by getting outside, giving you a boost of serotonin, bit of endorphins and dopamine as well. It's fine, isn't it, to be able to get out in fresh air and just forget about everything that's going on for half an hour or so. It really makes us, lifts our moods and make us smile a little bit.
lots of people doing online sessions too, and there's so much available that's free at the moment, isn't there? Lots of stuff on YouTube, on the TV, lots of daily things available. So I think it's been an opportunity for people to try something different. And if that thing doesn't work for you, that's fine. Try something again that's different. I think whatever it is for you, if you can connect with it, if it makes you feel good, if it's enjoyable for you, you're much more likely to keep up with that. And it does give you a boost of all of those good things. So yeah, well done to everybody. Lots and lots of stuff going on there. We hope we've been able to inspire you with a few different things perhaps that you hadn't thought of before.
Yeah, the last one on our list is connecting with each other, because we know that social interaction is so important for our well-being, and it's become really difficult, isn't it, when we're told that we're not allowed to visit family members or friends. So what we're going to ask you now is, how have you been keeping in connection with others? How have you been keeping people who are isolated engaged with what's going on, other than just the news and everything else? So
Perhaps you're on your own as well. Perhaps you're one of those people that isn't sharing your space with anyone. So, how have you been able to build connections or maintain those existing connections, reaching out to colleagues or family members, friends?
we've got straight away FaceTime family members, texting friends in the UK, Zoom catch up with friends. Oh, isn't that great? Virtual beer quizzes on Zoom, even online poker. That's a really good way to keep in touch with your friends, isn't it? Because I know, as Mandy said straight away, we're all in the same storm, but all in different boats. But being able to, the wonders of technology have been able us to be able to use and connect with different friends and people.
Yeah. And we know it's not the same as being in the same space as your loved ones. Somebody said their video call dates with your partner as well. Bless you, that's going to be tricky, but it's a way to keep that connection going. And if you can do something as we are here with cameras on, it's the next best thing, isn't it, to being in the same space as somebody. But whatever works for you again, try not to feel too isolated. Try and make that effort to carve off a piece of your day where you can just chat, where you can share a laugh, where you can share an enjoyable activity, whatever it is for you. We saw beers, poker, quizzes. Quizzes is something that Gareth and I do with our mum. We do it with our whole family, in fact, a weekend. And it's just a way of having a bit of a laugh and seeing each other's faces and keeping connected during this really tricky time. So yeah, make sure you do spend a bit of your day connecting with others, because again, we know that's absolutely vital to your sense of well-being.
Yeah. So I really hope that you've enjoyed it. There's a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of some of the models that we have available. But we really do believe that they're really helpful during this tricky time. If we can balance our well-being by doing some of those little adjustments, or maybe learning from others, and using that circle of control to really put things into perspective, I really hope that they will help you. However, we know that it's not going to work for everybody. Some people are going to really struggle through this tricky time. So as a charity, we just want to say, do you know what? It's absolutely fine to ask for help. And our charity are there to help out. If you needed to get in touch with any of us, you can private messages on this. We'll be hanging around. Or there's an email address there, learning@ilisten, that Mandy and I both have access to, and we'll be able to get back to any queries that you have. If we don't know the answer, as mentioned before, we've got a wealth of resource behind us who will be able to help us out through this tricky time. We're also really want to help as many people as we can. So our charity has been sharing a lots of resources recently, either via Facebook, sorry, Instagram. We've got them on LinkedIn. You can connect with us on there, or even we've got a wealth of videos available, similar to the one that we've just done, on our YouTube channel, I Listen. So please don't feel like you're in it on your own. We are here to help as much as we can.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining in so enthusiastically today. We know we asked you to join in via the chat function. I apologize if the sound quality wasn't too good at my end. I think we're suffering with the internet in my house today, so I apologize for that. Thanks for bearing with us. We're always welcome any feedback that you might want to give, any ideas and thoughts on other content you might want to see, either from us or from other people within the charity. So let us know. We've got a link there to our feedback page on our website as well. So, feel free to get in touch with us. We're always happy to hear whatever you've got to say. And thanks everybody for joining in. As Gareth said, we'll hang on just for a moment more to see if there are any questions that you're happy to share with everybody, or else direct to Gareth and myself by using the all panelists option on your chat box, or else feel free to use that email address on the screen too.
Oh, your volume got better. Well done, Mandy.
I don't know what it was. Internet, I think. Internet. The joys of technology.
Yeah, supportive advice for single parents, appreciated.
Okay,
absolutely. There's
that one. Yeah, thanks for that.
There's loads we can do to help, and we will be doing more webinars and stuff. And the rest of our team work quite closely in the schools, so we know that there's loads of resources available on our website. If you go into the community section or into the school section, there's quite a lot of resources there that are free and available to everyone.